Hello and welcome to another off-the-shelf board game review. Today we are going to look at Zpocalypse. Zpocalypse is a zombie survival game. Lists for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up. Says it plays in about 100 minutes, approximately an hour and a half. Now Zpocalypse is a semi-cooperative game where one player is actually going to eventually win by having the highest score. So you can actually play this game solo if you don't care about the score. You just want to see if you can survive the ultimate zombie apocalypse. In Zpocalypse, each player is going to take control of an ever-growing squad trying to survive a few days in the zombie apocalypse. You can play anywhere from 2 to 4 days, and as the days go by, the game gets harder and harder to the point where by the 4th day, probably nobody's going to survive, and you're probably going to finish the game with somebody just having the highest score and having everybody's squad wiped out. This is a game where everybody is pretty much going to be on the same side trying to fight off the zombies that are coming across a board. And the game's AI for the zombies is pretty simplistic in its control, but it's not controlled by a player. There is an expansion available for Zpocalypse called Zpocalypse Z Master, which actually allows a 5th player to play the game. I am not including this in the review because it is an actual expansion. I want to have a few more plays with it, but what the Zpocalypse Z Master expansion allows is a 5th player to play the game in control of the zombies, making it a 1 to 5 player game where one player is against the all, whereas in the base game, all the players are on the same team trying to survive the zombie apocalypse. Of course, there is going to be a final winner. That's the player who gets the most points at the end of the game. While Zpocalypse thematically is a very dark game, it is the zombie apocalypse after all. Thematically, this game is actually pretty light in that aspect. If games such as Zombicide were themed after a movie, they'd be themed after 28 Days Later, while Zpocalypse would be more themed after kind of more humorous movies such as Zombieland or movies like that. Again, it's a dark game, dark future, zombie apocalypse, but it's got a lot of quirky humor built in the game. But we'll get into that when I start talking more about the game. Going to take a few moments to go over the components you're going to get with the game box. The game is going to come with quite a lot of components actually. You're going to get, first of all, we're going to start with the rule book. The rule book is actually pretty well designed. There's not a lot of errors in it. It has a lot of gameplay examples, lots of images, lots of pictures in it. It shows you how to play the game. Overall, the rule book is really well written. There's a lot of humor included in the rule book to make it a little more of a fun read. It's not too long of a rule book. The rule book is only 21 pages. And if you look at it, you're going to notice there's a whole bunch of QR codes in the rule book itself, which is going to give you a link to the website where you can actually show videos which show you how to show you how to play the game. Again, it's not a super complex game, but the rule book is written pretty well. Not too hard to figure out the game from the base rule book that comes with the box. Next we have the victory point tracker. It's made out of not thin cardstock, but a little bit thicker than typical cardstock. There's some good images on it. The victory point tracker is pretty large enough to keep your pawns on it without them sliding off. Plus it's got some pretty cool thematic artwork on it. Looks like a top-down view of a city that's pretty much ruined. You see tanks and police cars. Pretty cool in that aspect. Next thing we got are the squad boards. Each player is going to start with a squad board. Now the game is tracked through dials, and these dials are actually designed pretty well. If you've played games such as Chaos in the Old World, or games such as that, or Battlestar Galactica, you'll be pretty familiar with these dials. The dials are pretty darn well made. They spin pretty easily, but not so loose that they spin around on their own. There's a hit point tracker, stats, and everything like that. The only thing that you may have occasionally is this is an additional dial right here. And if you're not paying attention when you're spinning your hit points, they may spin around too, and you'll lose track of your armor. Not a big deal, just turn them both at the same time and you won't have any problems with it. Squad board that each player gets also breaks down how the game is played in its various phases. Nice, easy reminder for people when you're first still learning how to play the game. After you know how to play the game, it's pretty simple, but for its first few couple games, the nice reminders on the board about your max hand size and the phase order. Pretty nice little touch. Zpocalypse comes with a lot of cards. The cards are a little bit of a thinner cardstock on them, very bendy, almost reminiscent of the kind of cards that came with Lords of Waterdeep. It's the cards that have that interesting laminate on it. I'm not quite sure the term they use for it, but they're very flexible, almost bendy, but a thinner cardstock. There's lots of images on the cards, You notice all the cards on the back have images on them, which helps you separate the cards in different decks. You have your survivor decks, you have your scavenge decks, lots of artwork on them, pretty cool on those. You have your phase 3 cards, your armory cards, item cards, and everything like that. Not a lot of artwork on the front of the cards, just mostly text on them and simple artwork on them until you get to the equipment, which kind of has cool stuff on it. The text on them is pretty good, very legible and everything like that. Overall, the cards are good quality. A little bit thin on the card stock, but with the good laminate that they used on it, the cards are going to last quite a long time. Not a problem there. Next up, we have the miniatures. Now, Zpocalypse comes with 39 miniatures. 30 miniatures for the zombies. They come in 2 colors. 9 miniatures for the heroes, plus the bases that the heroes stand on. Now, the miniatures, there are 2 different sculpts for the zombies. And the plastic they use for these miniatures isn't the best plastic. It's that softer plastic, almost what I like to describe as an army man plastic, which makes them very soft and very bendable. The positive for this plastic is that, well, they're soft and bendable. You don't have to worry about them snapping or anything like that, especially if you're a hobby gamer and you like your pieces staying together. The bad thing about that is you notice that the softer plastics aren't the best at holding high detail, so there's not really high detail on these. I mean, you can tell this was a female zombie, this was a male zombie, but the detail isn't quite that high. It's not terrible, but again, it's a softer plastic, so you're not going to see anything that's going to scream out, paint me, make me look awesome, or anything like that. It's basic components. I'd pretty much equate it to Last Night on Earth kind of plastic. Not bad, but simpler plastic. Each one of the survivor squads has their own sculpt. They all look different. Again, it's that softer plastic, so you're not going to get the super high details or anything like that, but you're going to get enough to see that he's carrying a gun. Not too bad. Another guy carrying a gun right there. Again, though, the plastic is very, very soft, and it becomes very apparent as a survivor who has the sword. Now, this is actually supposed to be a sword, not a whip out behind his back. Again, it's that softer plastic. You know, you're going to basically it's one of the faults with the softer plastics. They're soft, they're very bendable, and they just don't hold good detail. Not a big deal, but just something to be known, just something to be aware of when you get Zpocalypse. And Zpocalypse also comes with these stands that you're supposed to attach your survivors to when you start playing your game. You basically make your own little squad between your 2 little guys, and they just clip in on the bottom. They don't hold in very well. They pretty much fall out pretty easily. But once you get 2 of them in the same base, they kind of put pressure on each other, hold them in. It'll probably fall out occasionally when you're picking up. Not a big deal. You can, if you really don't care about making your own personalized squad, you can pretty much just glue them down. Not a big deal at all there. The game also keeps score with wooden meeples. They're nice little standard little wooden meeples, painted. They're not plastic. They are made out of wood. The game also comes with quite a few dice. The dice are engraved, so you don't have to worry about the dice losing their symbols anytime soon, and they're pretty thematic. The combat dice are red. They have a Z for the number 6, and the ammo check dice have the word click for the number 1. You roll a click, you're out of ammo. You roll a Z, it's always hit. A 5's also hit most of the time too, but there's some occasions where you need a 6 only to hit, and that's where the Z comes in effect. Pretty cool dice, pretty nice, hefty dice. They roll really well. And finally, underneath the final squad boards, we have I think this was a Kickstarter special bag, so I'm not gonna talk too much about this, but if you get it with the box, it's pretty cool. If you don't worry about it. I think this may have been for Kickstarter supporters only. Next, we have the tiles for the game. The game is played on interlocking tiles. They are double-sided with different kind of environments on both sides, and they actually scale in difficulty. So there's some tile sides that are more difficult than others for the starting tiles, and I'll get into that more later. Just know that the different size can increase or decrease the difficulty of the game. Nice little bits of artwork on them. You can see that this looks pretty much like what was once a supermarket or something like that. Good detail. There's lots of corpses. Pretty good cardstock. None of my tiles have warped, and I've had this game open and played it quite a few times so far. No warping. Pretty thick quality of cardboard. Again, double-sided, full-colored. Pretty good quality there. Finally, the game does come with a whole bunch of cardboard components. They're also good quality. Thick. They're going to last a long time. They're really nice. Quite a few of them. They are double-sided. They're for different aspects of the game, but nothing to complain about there. Overall, the components for Zpocalypse are really well made. My only complaint about it was the miniatures themselves. First, there could have been more of them. I'll get into that later. They also could have been a thicker, more hardier plastic, so there could have been better detail on them. Not too bad. There's different sculpts, which is nice, but it's that really soft plastic, and again, the detail isn't that great on them. And if you are a hobby gamer and you do like to paint your board games, you have those hobby games you like to paint, they're going to be a slight disappointment for you, but for the average board gamer, probably not even going to notice a difference. I mean, these are literally the quality of Last Night on Earth, and if that game didn't bother you, this game's miniature isn't going to bother you either. Overall, really good components for the game. I'm pretty impressed by what they gave you. Before I show you how to play Zpocalypse, you need to understand that Zpocalypse is a scenario-based game. Now the base game comes with multiple scenarios, and all the scenarios are going to play slightly different. There's even some scenarios that allow you to cut out phases of the game, so you're only playing certain phases of the game. You're not even playing the whole game. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to play the game just using the main scenario. This is the scenario they recommend you play first, and this is the scenario I'm going to instruct you how to play the game with. Again, there are multiple scenarios. They do play differently, and they even change up the rules of the game, so we're just going to concentrate on the main scenario only. In Zpocalypse, every player is going to get a squad board, and their squad board is going to represent their squad on the game board. Now every squad is going to come with a matching colored base, which you can put 2 heroes or 2 survivors on. Doesn't matter which 2 survivors you can pick. You can pick whatever ones look really neat to you, or just make interesting combos. Basically, these figures have no effect on the game. It's just the 2 figures you choose represent your squad on the board. And even though there's only 2 figures on the base, your squad can be anywhere from 1 to 4 survivors. You can never have more than 4, and if you have less than 1, if you have 0, you're out of the game. Each player's squad board has some rotating dials. Now the dials represent the various statistics. Firearm skill, which is going to go all the way from 0 all the way up to 10. Melee skill, which also goes up to 10. A player's squad smart skill, which is based on the smartest survivor in your squad. And then you have your movement, which is based on the slowest movement in your squad. There's also a hit point gauge, goes all the way up to 32 hit points, and your armor gauge, which helps you take damage throughout the game. These are tracked through rotating dials, and as your skills go up, these rotating dials will change. One thing to remember though is that your firearm skill and your melee skill, once they go up, they can never go down. So even if you have a 4 survivor squad and you lose 3 of your survivors in one turn, your firearm skill and your melee skill don't go down even though you've lost those 3 other survivors. In effect, all survivors are constantly training each other as the game goes on. But your smart skill is always the smarts of your smartest player. Your movement is the movement of the slowest player. So as that changes, these 2 will change. These will always go up, never go down, and of course your hit points, your armor will change throughout the game. Next we have our Survivor's Bunker. Now Zpocalypse is played out over 4 phases, but you have to understand those 4 phases are not fully chronological, and that'll make more sense as I start explaining the game why I'm saying that. But your survivor team is basically going to stay on this board through the first 3 phases of the game. Even though during the first 3 phases you're technically going out, exploring, and everything like that, your survivor stays on the board because the first 3 phases of the game are purely through card play only. You'll be building the board during those phases, but your miniature won't ever leave this bunker until the 4th phase of the game starts. It is a double-sided bunker, and once the zombies have killed all your survivors left in the bunker, the tile is flipped over to represent you've pretty much lost your base and you're pretty close to about to be losing the game. All players are going to simply place their squad representation on the bunker for the game. And again, their players will stay on that bunker until the 4th phase of the game starts. Next we have the victory point tracker, which is also an experience point tracker. You're going to notice it goes from 1 to 60, and there's going to be a whole bunch of multicolored steps every interval of 5. So 5, 10, 15, all the way up to 60. And at these points, as you pass these, your melee skill and your firearm skill are going to be permanently, potentially raised. So as your points go up, think of this as an experience chart and a point tracker. As you hit 5 points, you're going to get a skill increase. 10 points you're going to get a skill increase, 15, etc., all the way up to 60 points. Next we have the zombies, and the zombies come in 2 colors, and what that symbolizes is the green zombie always represents 2 zombies, the gray zombie always represents 1 zombie. If 2 gray zombies enter the same space, you simply remove them and replace them with the green zombie to represent 2 zombies. There's really not much difference. Don't ever consider it a zombie figure. Consider this just representing 2 zombies, where each one of these represents only 1 single zombie on the board. Next we have the daily goal cards. Every player at the start of their turn, or at the beginning of phase 1 for that day, is going to get their own individual daily goals card. The daily goals card is placed face down on top of your board so your opponents don't know what your daily goals are. And some of the goals can be pretty silly, some of them you can kind of serious. You'll see some like a daily goal, trick a zombie enter an MRI machine so you can reanimate them as a Frankenstein's monster and then you get control of them. Or you'll see other wacky ones like get a zombie to become your pet. Or sometimes you'll see serious ones like knock over one of your opponents or damage opponent. There's lots of strange ones, some humorous, some not so humorous. But basically there's a daily goal that you're going to get. If you accomplish your goal, at the end of the day, you're going to get bonus points for accomplishing the goal. And there's a goal and there's a challenge. Some cards will say either complete the goal or the challenge, and some will say accomplish both for even more points. Again, at the beginning of every single day, every player is going to get one of these goals for their squad. Next we got the survivor cards. Survivor cards are going to list how many victory points the survivor is going to give you at the end of the game if they survive. These little stars and the yellow circles represent victory points. You're going to see on a lot of the cards. There's going to be some thematic text for it. There's going to have a special ability. This is how many hit points the survivor gives your squad total. So this is added for all your survivors. So if you have this survivor and this survivor, your squad has a total of 14 hit points. Armor is also added together. So if you have these 2 in your squad, you have 2 armor. Again, brains is your smarts, and you're going to pick the smartest survivor. So this squad's smarts would be 2, although if you only had this person left in your squad, your smarts would be 0. And then movement is going to be based on the slowest movement, the slowest person in your squad. In this case, it's a 5, so the movement for the squad would be 5. Again, everybody gets their special ability. And on some of the survivors, you're going to see a symbol such of a gun and a number, or you're going to see what looks like a dagger and a number. And this is permanently added to your base, either firearm skill or your melee skill. So in this case, this squad would get a permanent bonus of 2 to their base firearms at the start of the game. Just going to go quickly over the rest of the cards that come with the game and what they're used for. There's a scavenge card. Every turn, every player is going to get a scavenge card on the phase for scavenging. And they're going to have a random test versus their brains. If they succeed by rolling a 5 or 6, they're going to get a lot of good stuff and a couple of zombies. If they fail their test, they're not going to get quite as many good things, and they're probably going to get more zombies. It's pretty random throughout the game. There's 3 different kinds of scavenge cards. There's an event scavenge card. There's a night owl scavenge card, and there's also a skill up scavenge card. Basically what you can do, just simply read the text, and then you can make a roll versus your smarts. You roll as many dice as your smarts. Higher smarts, higher chance of success. Every 5 or 6 is going to equal a success. You only need 1 success. And this is going to list how much items you find. This is going to be how many zombies are going to appear, how many weapons you're going to potentially find out of the armory. This is going to be how many items you're going to get out of the item deck, and that's going to be how many draws you're going to get from the food deck. Some of them isn't going to make much of a difference between a failure or a success, as this one is just going to be a couple extra zombies. Whereas some of the more difficult ones may have it so on a failure here, you only get 2 food and 5 zombies, where if you succeed, you would have gotten 3 food, 2 items, and 1 draw from the armory deck. So it varies. Some of them doesn't matter if you fail, but a lot of them makes a big difference if you fail your smarts test. Next is the Something's Happenings card. That one of these is going to be drawn every day of the game. It's basically going to say how many more zombies are going to spawn and how fast they move. And probably not a good card to show you because that one's got a lot of extra stuff on it. This would be 4 zombies. they each move 3 squares on night 1, where if suppose this was the 4th night of the game, you'd spawn 6 extra zombies, and each zombie is going to move 5. Finally, you have your armory items. These are going to tell you how many dice you roll in combat, how many victory points they have, the range of the item, how many dice you roll to see if you run out of ammo. And as you become more skilled, you're going to get more combat dice. So if you have 5 in your firearms, you're actually going to get 2 dice to roll. A 5 or 6 is a hit. If your firearm skill is a 10, you're going to roll 2 dice. You get a kill on a 4, 5, or a 6, or a Z in this game. Z is a 6. Whereas if your firearm skill is 0 through 4, you only get to roll 1 die with this, and you get to kill on a 5 or a Z. There's 2 different kinds of food cards. There's radioactive food, and if you feed this to your survivors, they lose 1 health. There's radioactive food, which is worth 2 feedings, but lose 2 life to your squad. And then there's the non-radioactive food, which is blue versus the green. You feed this to your squad, nothing bad is going to happen except they're going to be fed for another day. And finally, we have the item cards. Item cards are going to be a lot of different things like healing, scavenging for building defenses, food, armory. This is actually a wild card, which is actually a really good one. Most of them are going to be stuff such as this one, which is worth scrap to help build defenses during the fortify phase of the game. One other thing to show you is the tiles themselves. If you look really closely, there's going to be a lot of symbols on the tiles. Square hex or square base movement in the game. Diagonal movement is allowed. Spaces such as these cause damage to our survivors if they're on. The circle means nobody can enter that space. You're going to see arch openings and doorways and stuff like that. This symbol means it slows down survivors, but it doesn't slow down the zombies. The only thing that blocks them are barricades built by the survivors. And finally, you're going to have a magnifying symbol. If I can zoom in right there. Magnifying symbol means if a survivor squad enters that space, they can attempt to do a search check. To do a search check, they simply roll as many dice as they have smarts. Every single success is going to give them draws from the deck depicted in the magnifying glass. So if you had a smarts of 3 and you rolled a 5, and a Z, which is a 6, that'd be 3 successes. You'd roll on that, you get to get 3 draws from the item deck. I have the game set up for the main scenario right now. The first thing you're going to do with the main scenario is the bunker is going to start with 2 survivors and 2 cards from the armory deck in the bunker. Now these aren't part of anybody's squad at the beginning of the game. Basically what these are added for is to reduce the player elimination in the game. If a player loses all their squad members, they can actually start by resetting their squad board and start all over again by adding these 4 cards to their squad to start over from basically ground zero again. These survivors can also be put in other players' squads because they'll join whoever is willing to pay them 2 food. As soon as they get 2 food, they'll immediately join the squad of whoever gave them the 2 food. Our squad is going to start with 2 survivors in it. We have a dog and we have another survivor. Probably not the best starting squad in the game. Actually, this is kind of a handicapped squad because in the normal game, each survivor can carry 4 items per survivor. Unfortunately, the dog can only carry 1 item, so the max amount of items we can carry is 5. So we're going to start with 2 weapons, 2 food, and 1 scrap. Our stat board has already been set up. We start with 1 firearm skill, 0 melee, 0 smarts. The highest smarts, unfortunately, neither one of them has much smarts to help us there. And the slowest movement is going to be where we're going to start. So we are actually going to start with a 5 movement, 12 hit points, and 1 armor. We're also going to start with a draw from the daily goal deck, and we're going to draw our daily goal. Each squad is going to get to draw their daily goal, and it looks like we are going to get the daily goal of Luna. It says we need to moon an enemy, get within 2 spaces of a zombie, and then spend 1 action to drop trousers. And if you manage to do that, you're going to gain 2 victory points. Again, like I said, the game kind of has a Zombieland vibe to it, so you're going to get a few of these goals, which are going to be kind of humorous. Your goals are going to be kept face down, so no other players know what you need to do to get those extra victory points. Now that we've got the game set up, we can go ahead and start the first phase of the first day. Again, the game is played 2 to 4 days. You decide how many days you're going to play at the beginning of the game. We're going to start day 1, phase number 1. Now normally each new day, phase 1, the player with the lowest score is going to start phase number 1. Since all the survivors for the first day are going to be equal at a score of 0, you're simply going to roll the dice. Highest roller is going to be able to go first, or however you wish to decide it. Once you've got the first player to go, the first player is going to draw a scavenge card, and they're going to look at the scavenge card, and they're going to read it, and this is going to be an event card in this case. In this one, what we're going to do is we're going to roll a die, and we're going to try to get a 5 or a 6. Since this is an event card, it's going to make us perform a test before we can actually go to our smarts test for our scavenging. In the case of this card, we needed to make a firearms test. Our firearms skill is actually only 1 right now, and we have to get a 5 or 6 on a 1d6. We get a 1, we're going to fail our firearms test, and which says we're going to go on to draw 2 survivors who can potentially join our squad right now. These survivors are going to start sideways, and they don't fully join our squad until they've been fed. I'm just laying this out so it's easier to see the game. Normally this would be pretty much more of a compact little area. Then we're going to make our smarts test to see how well our scavenging went for the day. We're going to roll as many dice as we have smarts. Unfortunately, our team has a smarts of 0. There's a rule in the game that if your team is not that smart, you get a minimum of 1 die to do your scavenge test. We're going to do our scavenge test, and we're going to get a 1. We're not doing too well on the dice right now, so we're going to get a fail on our scavenge, which allows us to draw 2 food. We get 1 draw from the item deck. We're going to get a first aid card. We're going to get 1 item from the armory deck. And we're going to get a firearm, which is going to be a nice thing. And then finally, 7 zombies are going to spawn on the board on a tile. We're going to draw 1 tile, and we're going to place it connecting to the board. Now, if we place it connected to the board as close to the entrance to the bunker as possible, we're going to score an extra victory point. Early in the game, the victory points are going to be very helpful, so we're actually going to do that. We're going to score 1 victory point, and then we're going to spawn 7 zombies on this tile. Simply place the tile down, and then we add our zombies to the board. The green player's turn for phase 1 is now over. Now the other players are going to take their turn. And after, in a 3-player game, after all 3 players take their turn, the board may look something like this. We're going to see that 3 extra tiles have been added to the board with a whole bunch of more zombies on the board. That's the end of phase 1. We now move on to the feed and fortified phase of the game. Now the first part of the feed and fortified phase is the feed part. You have to feed all your survivors that are currently in your squad, plus if you want those survivors that you found during the scavenge phase to join your squad, you need to feed each one of them at least 1 food. If you feed each one of them at least 1 food, they're going to join your squad. Otherwise, they're going to go directly to the bunker, or they can be purchased by another player spending 2 food and have them join their squad. We were pretty fortunate with our scavenge phase. We actually ended up with 4 food. We got, well, technically 4 food. We have 2 food right here. 1's radioactive, 1 is non-radioactive. So we'll use those to feed our 2 survivors who are in our squad right now. And one of them is going to take a radioactive token, so we remember that we're going to be down 1 hit point for the radioactive food when we come to the recalculating of the hit points. We'll then take this scavenge card right here, just what I need, and we're going to use it as a food to get this person to join our squad. We now have 3 people in our squad, and we'll discard that card. And then finally, we'll use the creme brulee as our final food. And this is a nice piece of food because it actually gives us an extra 1 to our firearms skill also. This will feed our 4 survivors who will join our squad, and we get to raise our firearms skill by 1 point. bring us all the way up to 2 firearm skill. After we're done feeding our survivors, we're going to recalculate the statistics for our squad, and the new members of our squad are going to add their statistics in. And after we take away the radiation token for the radioactive food, we're going to, with 25 life, 3 armor, 3 firearm skill, 1 to our melee skill. Our smarts is actually 2 now, which is going to be great for searching in future phases. Our movement is going to stay at 5. After we're done with the feeding part of the feed and fortified phase 2, we move on to fortify, where we actually start laying traps on the board to help us in phase 4 when those zombies start attacking. Before we move on to the fortify phase, I did miss one little thing with my 2 survivors. Got a little bit ahead of myself. During the scavenge phase, my 2 survivors actually have a special ability that allows them to get a couple extra card draws. So I'll throw those in there really quick. Not going to make much of a difference in the explanation of the rules, but just for completeness, I did want to let you know that there were 2 extra cards I should have drawn for my 2 sturdy survivors' special abilities. And actually, at the end of the scavenge and fortify phase, this survivor right here has a nice special ability that I can actually take stuff back out of the discard pile and add it back into my hand, which is kind of a nice little bonus too. Going to move on to the fortify phase. On the fortify phase, players are going to start placing traps on the board in anticipation of the eventual zombie onslaught. Now it takes survivors to place items on the board, obstacles and traps, and it also takes scrap to do the same. Now there's some obstacles that don't require any scrap, and there's some that do. But every trap obstacle requires the survivors to work on it. Basically what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the traps you can build. You can build stuff such as walls, barbed wire traps, doors, gates, sandbags. All these things are going to be placed on the board, and it's going to cost scraps to build these things, and it's also going to cost your survivors are going to have to take the time to actually build these. For this example, I'm just going to show you our survivors are going to build a wall and a barbed wire trap. Now, a barbed wire trap, for a barbed wire trap to be created, is going to take 2 survivors. So we're going to say these 2 survivors are going to work on that. Dog can't work on any of these things. It's one of his disadvantages. So our final survivor is going to work on building a wall, which takes 1 survivor and 1 piece of scrap. Simply discard the scrap, and then we place those items on the board as strategically as we can. The only thing that you cannot do is these items cannot be placed on a tile that has zombies on them already. So we can only place them on these 4 tiles. So a good place to put it would be right there, because these zombies are probably going to try to start coming after our bunker entrance right there. And maybe place a wall right there to block those zombies off right there. All the other players are going to get a chance to do the same thing by having to feed all their survivors, and they're also going to get a chance to put out fortifications on the board. You're also going to score points for doing this. The green player is actually going to get 2 points for making the barbed wire trap and another 2 points for building the wall, which is going to bring their score from 1 that they got from laying the tile earlier all the way up to 5, which is going to give them a free skill up. They're going to spend that point and go ahead and raise, in this example, raise their firearm skill to 4. 1 more point in firearm skill and they're actually become trained in firearms, so they're going to do more damage with their firearms. That's the end of the feed and fortify phase, except for the special ability of our survivor. She's going to use her special ability to take the just what I needed card back and add it back into our hand using our special ability. We now move on to the 3rd phase, the something's happening phase. The 3rd phase is the something's happening phase. It's a very quick phase. You're simply going to draw a card, and depending on what day of the game it is, you're going to place zombies on the board. And you're going to place the amount of zombies based on the amount of players. For every single player in the game, you're going to place 1 tile on the board, connected to the board, and this many zombies on each tile. So in a 3-player game, you'd place 3 more tiles on the board, and 4 zombies per tile for an additional 12 zombies on the board. And during this night, all the zombies are going to move 3 squares. Whereas opposed if this had been the 4th night of the game, you place 3 tiles on the board, connected to the board. Each tile would get 6 zombies on it, and all the zombies on the board are all going to move 5 spaces each. Some of these something's happening cards are also going to have special events that are going to happen too. Not going to get into that. There's 16 of these cards. They all play differently, add a lot of theme, but that's just basically how they're played. So eventually your board after the end of the third phase is going to look something like this. You're going to see there's lots more zombies on the board. And this was actually a pretty mild third phase. I've actually seen a lot more zombies. By the end of the fourth day, it's possible to get about 50 zombies on the board or more. Finally, we move on to the fourth phase of the game. The fourth phase of the game is where it all happens. Combat with the zombies. During the combat phase of the game, players are going to go first. It was day 1 or 2. If it's day 3 or 4, the zombies actually get to go first. And on day 4, players don't get any armor checks versus the great advancing zombie hordes. Players are going to get a couple different actions to do. They're going to get 2 actions to take on their turn. Those actions can be using healing cards, searching a space that has a search square on it, moving up to their full movement space, or performing an attack. They can also use a special ability if they happen to have a special ability that works in the combat phase of the game. Players will just simply move out of the bunker. It costs 1 action to move out of the bunker. And from the bunker you can either move to the bunker entrance, or if you have any of these manhole covers, you can move to one of those for 1 movement. Or if there's additional bunker entrances on the board, you can also move to those. Now there's a potential for up to 2 bunker entrances to be on the board, plus the sewer entrances. Costs you 1 movement. You simply pick up your piece, move out of the entrance, and either move here or one of these sewer entrances for 1 movement. And then you continue your move. So if you have 5 movement, you can spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. Or simply pop out right here for 1 movement, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. You can also attack. Now attack is based on dice. Now there's 2 kinds of combat. There's range combat and there's melee combat. Range weapons can be used in melee combat though, so don't think only range weapons will only attack at a range. For range combat, what you're going to do is you're going to use all your range weapons, and your target has to be within line of sight, so it can't be blocked by walls or any squares that have the line through the circle showing that that's an impassable square. If you have line of sight to a target, you think that you're actually attacking the square versus the target. You are attacking the target, but you're also targeting the square the target is on. So for instance, if our survivors want to attack this group right here, they simply roll as many dice as they have range weapons that reach that range. Both these weapons have a range of 6, and with a firearm skill of 4, they say that each one is going to roll 1 red die for this one, 2 red dice for this one, and each one has to roll a blue dice to see if you're going to run out of ammunition. Simply roll all the dice. A 5 or a 6 on the red dice is a hit, instantly killing 1 zombie. A 1 through a 4 is a miss, and if any of these say click like this one did, you have to pick one of your range weapons to be out of ammunition. It's up to you whichever one you want to pick. You get to pick it, and it's completely out of ammunition until you spend an ammunition card to replace the ammo, which could be something like a just when I needed a card or an actual ammo card. It's a free action to reload, but it does cost you a card. Simply discard the card and the item is reloaded instantly for a free action. Every 5 or 6 Z is going to kill 1 zombie, and if this was your target, you simply remove one of the zombies and replace it with a single. Now if in this example, if this had actually been 1 zombie and 2 zombies here, and we got more successes than what we actually rolled, if we had targeted this square, we would kill this 1 zombie with this 1 hit right here. Then we have 2 additional hits which we can use on any adjacent square within line of sight. Since this zombie was adjacent to our first target, we can kill these 2 zombies also. Every zombie killed is going to give you 1 experience point on the point tracker, so if we killed 4 zombies in that instance, we'd go from 5 to 9 points, 1 point away from another skill up. Now, melee combat is quite similar, but one slight difference is you can target everything that surrounds your figure. So if our poor group of survivors happen to be in the middle of this square with a whole bunch of zombies all around our poor survivors, you get to roll your attack dice, and let's just say, for instance, we had enough equipment equipped that would allow us to attack with 5 dice. We'd roll all 5 dice, and every single success will allow us to take out one zombie around us, and we get to pick. So if we only got 2 successes, I can take this one out, or I can take out both of these and replace it with 2 singles, because in the later stages of the game, single zombies are weaker than double zombies when it comes to damage. But if I had gotten actually all of these had been successes, I could have 5 successes. I could have removed these 2 right here, and this one, for example, if that's all that was left. So with melee combat, you can actually target all the zombies around you, whereas opposed to ranged combat, you'd simply target the one zombie, and any additional rolls will allow you to target the zombies around your targeted zombie. And now finally we come to the zombie part of the turn. All zombies on their turn, controlled by the limited AI of the game, all zombies are always going to make a beeline for the closest bunker entrance. The only caveat to that is if there's ever a survivor within 4 squares of a zombie and the zombie has line of sight, they're actually going to move towards that survivor instead of moving towards the bunker. So if our survivor had been here and the zombie was here, he would actually turn around and go towards the survivor. They're pretty single-minded, so if in their path they pass by another survivor, they're going to keep going after the first survivor they saw. So if somehow the walls were there and the second survivor came into view, they'd still keep going after him and not that survivor, just because that's the first group of survivors that they saw. If zombies get within melee range of our survivors, that's when the zombies get to attack in melee combat. And the way melee combat works is first you're going to roll a red die for every survivor you have in your party. Every roll of a 5 or 6 is going to prevent one of those zombies from attacking your group of survivors. So if you have 4 survivors in your group, simply roll the dice. 1 success means that one of these 6 zombies is not going to be able to attack, so we'll just say this one can't attack. So these remaining 5 zombies will then roll an attack, and zombies pretty much automatically hit your survivors if they weren't blocked by your survivors. You're going to roll all the dice, 1 dice for every single zombie, add up the total of all the dice, subtract your squad's current armor, and that's how much armor, or that's how many hit points of damage your squad is going to take unless you have special abilities. So in this example, 5 of the remaining 6 zombies would have hit. Our survivors would have taken, 20 points of damage, minus 3 for their armor, so they would actually take 17 points of damage. Since they only have 25, they're only going to go down to 8 hit points left over in our squad. Now, squads survive as a squad, so the squad isn't dead. We still have all 4 of our survivors. The only way an individual survivor ever dies is if on the zombie's attack they manage to roll 2 Z's or a double Z. A double Z means one of your survivor is instantly killed. His stats are reduced from your party. You modify your stat board right then and there, recalculate your hit points, and that survivor of your choice is removed and replaced by a zombie. There's a few extra combat rules depending on what day of the game you're in, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Again, the game gets harder as you go further into the days of the game. By day 4, you're not even getting armor. The zombies go first. The game gets much, much harder. But this gives you a rough idea of how Zpocalypse is played over the 4 phases of the game. Once you complete all 4 phases of the game, you do each new day all over again, complete all 4 phases. The combat phase itself goes on until either all survivors are wiped out or all zombies have been wiped out. Once that's done, you simply start over with all the survivors back in the bunker, back on phase 1 of the next day. Everybody gets a new goal, and you go from there. Don't forget to figure out your points you get if you manage to complete your goal on your during your day, and you're going to keep doing this until you get to the predetermined amount of days. At the end of that amount of days, they suggest 2 days. The person with the highest score is going to be the final winner. Now, normally during my reviews, I like to discuss how family-friendly a game is. I'm a father of 2 young kids. I enjoy my board gaming time with my younger kids, and just because a board game says 12 and up, 13 and up, 14 and up, that doesn't necessarily mean that the game is needing an older kid to play. A lot of times it's just because the game has smaller components or choking hazards, and that's why game companies are required to put these higher age requirements on games. So I like to take a moment to discuss how relevant I think the age requirement is for this game. Zpocalypse says age 14 and up, and I think that's probably a good estimate for this game. It is a zombie survival game. You're dealing with zombies, you're dealing with undead. There's lots of graphic imagery in the game. There's bloody corpses on the board. There's images on the back of the cards. I mean, this isn't exactly Saturday morning cartoon stuff. It's pretty grim zombie stuff. It's good artwork. I like the artwork, but again, it's probably not something you're going to want a younger child to see. Complexity-wise, the game is not that difficult. It's rolling dice, a lot of random luck and everything like that. Most of the game is random, luck-based, luck of the draw, luck of the dice, and everything like that. So it doesn't take a deep strategy. You're not going to be planning your moves 15 moves in advance in this game. You're basically going to be going, oh my god, we're swarmed by zombies. Somebody go here, because we are all about to start getting overrun and swamped. The game, though, does have a lot of graphic images. You're going to have the blood splatter on the images. You're going to have the survivors who look, well, they look like they've had a better day, and today is not that better day. And plus, there's the blood spatters on the board. Saying that, I'm going to say that this game is probably best for 11, 12, and 13 and up. Just due to the graphic images, not because of the complex of the game, just due to the imagery of the game. The game does say it plays 2 to 4 players, but it really is a cooperative game, just with a competitive scoring mechanic on it. So you really could play this as a 1-player game. Take 1 or 2 survivors, I'd recommend 2, and try to see if you make it through all 4 games. That would probably be a pretty challenging game, and I bet a lot of players probably wouldn't make it to the 4th day, at least for the first couple of plays, or based on luck of the draw. Zpocalypse, in my opinion, plays best with 4 players, mainly because these are the kind of games where you're going to get a lot of group mentality, where you get people ribbing each other, taunting each other. And there's also a little bit of comedy in the game with some of the cards that have kind of comedic effect to it. Again, like I said, this game really is more zombie land than 28 Days Later. It's dark and grim, but there's nice levity to the game that adds a little bit of humor to it. And that's also going to be increased with the multiplayers. Plus, the game just offers a little more interaction. You're going to see more of the cards, and since during phases of the game, there is player interaction where you can actually trade with other players. So if you trade with players, you have a better chance of getting the supplies you really need. Unless you have a player who's really just going to be mean and going to screw you over and say, nope, you can't have this piece of food you really need badly to help that one survivor. And you know, it's possible. It makes the game kind of interesting, adds to the fun. So in my opinion, really best as a 4-player game, but honestly it can be played by 1, 2, 3, or 4 players just as well. If you do play a 4-player game, you're playing all 4 days though, expect it to be a really long game. Probably about 2.5, maybe even 3 hours. That is if you make it through all 4 days of the zombie apocalypse. Zpocalypse is another addition to the zombie survival horror themed genre games. There's quite a few games available in the genre. There's Last Night on Earth, there's Zombicide, there's a whole bunch of other games matching the theme. So it's fighting in a crowded market, so it needs to do something to stand out. And I think Zpocalypse does do a good job of standing out in the market by playing a little bit differently than other zombie games. It is a co-op game, which isn't unique, but it does offer the ability for there to be a final victor at the end of the game thanks to the scoring track. The game does match the zombie theme very well. There's a very fatalistic theme to the game. It's not if your survivors are going to die, they are going to die. Is can you handle what's going to happen when your survivors die and keep going and survive for the additional days it takes to win the game. There's a little bit of humor in the game. Again, I've said this a few times, but it definitely is more zombie land with a whole bunch of little those slapstick humor thrown in the game. But you definitely do feel that it is the zombie apocalypse into the game. The game retails for $60, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of components for that $60. You're getting a pretty good rule book, and I should actually say more than pretty good, because as a first release from a new board game company, to see a rules manual that you can actually read the game and learn how to play the game first time is pretty impressive. It's very common these days for rule books from new companies to either be a jumbled mess, have lots of contradictions in it, or just really not teach you how to play the game efficiently. Now, while the rulebook isn't perfect, there's going to be a few errors in there and a few ambiguities, and there's some other ambiguities in the game too with some of the card play. It's not terrible, and a lot of it you can pretty much rule out instantly. But overall, the rulebook is done well enough that you can learn how to play the game, and it's going to answer most of your questions. The components for the game are done really well. You get a lot of cardboard, you get a lot of tiles for the game, and I should say that I did get the Kickstarter, which means I got the Z Emergency, which came with a few extra tiles for the Z Emergency. I don't know how the Z Emergency is going to be available in the future. I will just say that however it's available, if you buy Zpocalypse because you like what you see, pick up Z Emergency. The extra tiles are going to make a difference, and also the encounter cards are going to make a huge difference. I'll get into those in a second. I didn't want to muddy the waters during my gameplay explanation earlier. The rest of the components are pretty good. The squad boards are done really well. The dials are designed very well. They're not falling apart. Pretty sturdy, very durable. I like how the game has multiple scenarios. I mean, it's not one or two scenarios. We're looking at quite a few scenarios. Plus, if you really want to, there's 2 blank cards to build your own scenarios on. Now, not all of these scenarios are balanced, and not all of them are going to be the best scenarios you're ever going to play. The day 1 scenario without the Z Master or Z Emergency expansion isn't that great. Basically what you're doing is you're playing the 4th phase only, and by doing that you're not getting the rest of the game that makes Zpocalypse different and unique. And the way it's played is you simply go to an edge of a tile, move your guy to the edge of the tile, flip another tile over, add it to the stack, roll 1d6, add that many zombies to the board, move on, kill those zombies, and repeat. There's nothing else that's going to happen except for a few searches and some random bad luck with a dice roll. It's not really that fun of a scenario, but if you have the Z Emergency expansion, it adds the encounter cards, and instead of rolling a die and getting a random amount of zombies every time you explore a new tire, you're actually going to get these encounter cards, which actually add a lot of variety to the game and make it a lot more entertaining if you play such as a day 0 scenario, which is the phase 4 of the game only. It totally ignores the first 3 phases of the game. Again, without the Z Emergency, I think those scenarios are pretty boring, not much to them, and very overly simplistic. With the Z Emergency, they get a lot better, so I definitely recommend you picking up Z Emergency if you pick up Zpocalypse. Now, as I said, I think the components overall are actually pretty well done. My only complaint with the components are the miniatures themselves. I'm not a big fan of the softer plastics. It's not a big deal. You're only spending $60 for the game. If this was a $100 game like Zombicide and you got these kind of miniatures, it'd be worth complaining about. But for a $60 game, these miniatures are actually pretty darn good. I mean, yes, they're softer, yes, they're bendy, yes, the details aren't that great, but there are 30 zombie miniatures, and they are 2 different sculpts, and then there's also the survivors, and they also have different sculpts too. On the topic of the zombie miniatures though, there are not enough miniatures included in the game for a 4-player game playing a 4-day scenario. And it's actually possible, very, very rare, you just need almost a perfect storm of cards, but it is actually possible to play a 2-day game with 4 players and you can actually run out of zombies. And again, that almost requires a perfect storm, but it is possible to play a 4-player game for 4 days, and about half of the time you're not going to have enough zombie miniatures to put on the board. Now, if you have extra zombie games, it's not a big deal, but it is kind of unfortunate they don't give you enough figures to play a full game when it does say it is supposed to allow you to play up to 4 days. Honestly, most people aren't going to play a 4-day game because the game does get very brutally challenging, and it does run a little bit long at that point, especially for a game like this, which does have a lot of luck components in it. This game can be very brutal when it comes to luck. If you get a bad string of luck, it's just going to be brutalize the game to the point that you can almost get a runaway leader. If you are the person who's just drawing the right cards, you're getting the right cards at the right moments, you're making the right kills, you're pretty much going to fly up the score track, and nobody's going to be able to catch up to you unless they're also getting good cards and good mixes. For instance, if you are just a lucky guy who gets this card right here, it really doesn't matter what your smarts are, because you're going to get a pretty good amount of scavenge and you're going to go on and get some pretty good stuff. Whereas opposed, if you ended up with this scavenge card right here and your smarts is 1, you have to roll a 5 or a 6 of 1 die in a hope to get good resources. And if you fail, you aren't going to get any resources for your scavenge attempt. All you're going to do is add 7 zombies to the board. And you have to get supplies on your turn. If you aren't getting supplies through the scavenge, you have to get supplies by finding them on the board. And you got to understand, this is a hectic board where there's zombies swarming you, and you need to take time out of fighting that zombie swarm to find these spaces on the board that allow you to search to get extra food. Because if you don't feed your survivors are going to lead your squad or leave your squad, and if you don't have survivors in your squad, you can't play. You're going to end up with 1 survivor, and that 1 survivor is going to be able to carry 1 weapon, and he's going to have very little hit points compared to other squads with 3 or 4 survivors, and it's just going to basically be a snowball effect, and you're just going to basically fall further and further behind in the score. Again, that can lead to a runaway leader. It's not going to happen every time, but if the dice are not in your favor and luck is just not in your favor, especially with the card draws and everything like that, it is quite possible to just have the game just snowball you at that point. I think the smart statistic, while we're on that topic, is a little bit overpowered. You could have what would look like a pretty decent squad with 4 survivors in it, but if your smarts is 1, you're only going to get to roll 1 die for your scavenge check, you only get to roll 1 die for searching your squares, and you have to get a 5 or a 6. Whereas opposed, if you got really lucky and happened to get a squad that has a smarts of 3, you're going to get 3 dice to roll on those scavenge checks, and only 1 of those dice needs to be a 5 or a 6 to get those really good results on that scavenge roll. And on top of that is if you land on one of these search spaces and you roll your smarts check and you happen to get 3 successes, you're actually going to get 3 draws from the deck from that draw space, whereas opposed to somebody with 1 smarts, the most they'll ever be able to get from that space is 1 card with that search action. And again, like I said, that feeds into the luck aspect of the game. It's, I just have to be honest. Sometimes that luck is just going to be against you. Sometimes it's going to be in your favor. And depending on your opinion of luck, that's going to influence how much you're really going to enjoy the game. The game can also be very, very brutal sometimes. Sometimes you're going to draw a card such as this, and you're not going to get a lot of zombies on the board, and you're going to be able to explore, search these spaces, and you're going to be pretty much in control on that day of the game. And then sometimes you're going to end up with a card like this, where on day 4 is going to put 9 zombies on every tile for every player in the game. In a 4-player game, that's going to be 36 zombies on the board. It's going to create an extremely hectic situation where you're going to be lucky if you don't end up losing all your survivors on your turn in phase 4 of the combat phase. Overall, I think Zpocalypse is a fun game. There's a lot of good things going for the game. I like the random setup. The game board is going to change every time you play it, and the players are actually going to work together building the board. They get to decide where they're going to put tiles. They can be strategic about it, go for the points, or you can just be every man for yourself, and hopefully you're the last player with the highest score at the end of the game. The game, like I said, can be really brutal though. There can just be a swarm of zombies, and if the dice aren't in your favor, you're going to roll misses. Those dice are just not going to be your friend. The zombie's going to overwhelm you, and your squad is pretty much going to be destroyed. I do like the fact that there is minimized player elimination in the game. If your squad is completely destroyed, you can still return to the bunker as long as you haven't lost the bunker, and you recruit one of the survivors from the bunker. Again, that's nice. Games with player elimination, especially when you're talking about 2+ hour games, are not always a positive for a lot of player groups. So the fact that the game has minimized player elimination is nice. Now, of course, you're not going to be as strong as your original squad was because you're starting basically with a new squad of survivors again, but at least you're not out of the game. The game does match the zombie theme very well. There's a very fatalistic, you're going to die feel to the game. It's really good. I like it. They did a really good job. Again, you're going to lose survivors. It adds to the theme, adds to the tension, and it can be really brutal. You can go for one turn doing okay to the next turn, one bad die roll, get surrounded by zombies, and you pretty much going to lose half of your squad and have to limp away and try to survive and get going again. Overall, if you're looking for a fun, cooperative, zombie slaying game for your game group to play that can play up to 4 players with cooperative rules, a game board that changes all the time, a lot of randomness, a little bit of luck, and a lot of fun and a little bit of humor, Zpocalypse is a very good game if that's what you're looking for. One minor suggestion I'm just going to add in. One of the players in my group was didn't like the theme of the fact that the zombies were basically appearing on the board and they were standing still while the players were in the bunker during phases 2 and 3. And if you have players who get bothered by that and they feel the theme of just the zombie standing there while the board is building up pulls them out of the game, I came up with a suggestion of using one of the dice on one of the tiles. Whenever you're told to spawn 5 zombies, just simply put a die with the number 5 on it as a reminder, and then during the combat phase just simply place 5 zombies on the board. And again, the only reason why I did that is because there was one player in the game group who, for some reason, it bothered them that the zombies were standing on the board doing nothing while the players were doing their feeding and fortifying phase. If you have players bothered by that, I suggest just adding a die to one of the tiles to suggest and show how many zombies are going to be added to the tile. Just a little side point I want to add there. Again, Zpocalypse, fun zombie survival game. If you don't mind a lot of luck, it can be a great game to add to your collection. This has been an off-the-shelf board game review. Thanks for watching.